That moves us to this slide. In a product layout, the main concern is to balance the assembly line so that no workstation becomes a bottleneck. What is a bottleneck? If I have station number 1 taking 8 minutes, station number 3 taking 8 minutes, station number 4 taking 8 minutes, but in between I have station number 2, which takes 10 minutes to complete all the assigned tasks. So it is obvious that station number 2, which is taking 10 minutes, whereas all the other workstations are taking 8 minutes for each unit of the product, station number 2 becomes a bottleneck. On the other hand, if I say all the workstations are taking 10 minutes each, but station number 2 is taking 8 minutes per unit, now station number 8 is underutilized and you are creating work in process. If you have many workstations in between which are taking less time than the other workstations, you don't want either one. You want to have a smooth, balanced assembly line. So what does it involve? It involves the determination of the number of workstations and the assignment of the various tasks to these workstations. If I have 25 tasks to be completed in the assembly, how many workstations do I require? Do I require 25 workstations? 1 task per workstation? Maybe, but most likely not. You may be able to combine half a dozen tasks on workstation 1, 3 tasks on workstation 2, 5 on task 3, and so on. And for 25 tasks, you may really require only 4 or 5 workstations. That is the key, to determine how many tasks we have for the process and how to assign them to different workstations. And also make sure you assign the tasks in such a way that each workstation takes approximately the same amount of time. Minimize the number of workstations. More number of workstations, more space, more money, more number of people. So you want to minimize the number of workstations ideally. Minimize idle time. You want to minimize idle time, maximize utilization. That is, you want to make sure that each of your assembly workers is spending each of their minutes very efficiently, that they're not starving for work. Minimize work in process inventory. You don't want inventory in between the workstations. Ideally, you don't want to have any work in process. Like I said earlier, all the movement of products should take place in a synchronous way so that there is absolutely no inventory waiting to be processed between workstations. Achieve synchronous flow. Again, I have mentioned that. The flow should be synchronized, so that there is no work in process inventory. If the time taken on workstation 1 is 15 minutes, then the time taken on the second workstation, third, fourth, so on, should all be 15 minutes so that there is synchronous flow after every 15 minutes. So if the 71st product is at workstation 5, the 70th product is on workstation 4. The 69th product is on workstation 3, and so on. Now, at the end of 15 minutes, the products will move, the units will move from one workstation to another at the same time. That is a synchronous flow. Finally, you have to assign the tasks to the workstations in such a way that you do not violate the precedence or zoning constraints. What do I mean by that? Precedence constraint is where every task has other tasks that need to be done before or after in a specific sequence. You cannot violate that. You got to have the welding done before you can start painting, an obvious example. So the welding activity precedes the painting activity. And there are numerous such precedence relationships. What precedes what succeeds what task. You got to take that into consideration. The other consideration is zoning. What I mean by that is there is a finite amount of space at each workstation. Many a time, if you're talking about an airplane, then you may not be able to work on the front of the plane as well as the back of the plane at the same workstation, for example. So these are zoning constraints. So you got to take that into account. You may not have any zoning constraints if you have enough space, but in some cases you may have. So these are some of the objectives that you have to take into consideration when you're balancing the assembly line. So let us look at some terminology in assembly line balancing. The single most term in assembly line balancing is cycle time. What is cycle time? And I have given multiple definitions of what cycle time is. Number one, it is the time spent by each unit at each workstation. I gave already examples. It can be 30 seconds, it can be 15 minutes, it can be a whole week at each workstation. So that is my cycle time. What is the other definition of a cycle time? Frequency at which parts are transferred between workstations. Remember the term? Synchronous flow. At the same time, you are moving parts from workstation 5 out of the assembly line, workstation 4 to 5, 3 to 4, 2 to 3, 1 to 2, and the new one coming into 1. So a cycle time is the frequency at which every 15 minutes you have a new product coming into workstation 1, the old product going from 1 to 2, another one going from 2 to 3, 3 to 4, 4 to 5, another leaving the assembly line. And that comes to the third bullet. Cycle time is the frequency at which finished parts come out of the assembly line. So we can know in this assembly line where I'm saying the cycle time is 15 minutes. Every 15 minutes, not only do you see product going from workstation 1 to 2, a unit going from 2 to 3, but you also see one coming out of the assembly line. And how do you calculate this cycle time? Cycle time is nothing but the total available production time. So if I have 10 hours of production in a day, that is total available production time, divided by total number of units to be produced. So for simple example, if I have 10 hours in a day, and I need to produce 40 units in a day. So divide 10 hours by 40. So you get 1/4 of an hour, which goes down to 15 minutes. So my cycle time is 15 minutes. On the other hand, one more example, if I have only 8 hours of production in a day, and I need to produce 16 units a day, a more complex product. Do the math. 8 hours divided by 16 is half hour, 30 minutes. So my cycle time is 30 minutes, which means, let me repeat, every unit spends 30 minutes at each workstation. Every 30 minutes, there is movement of parts or products from one workstation to another. And every 30 minutes, there is a unit coming out of the assembly line, finished, completed, ready to be shipped out. Finally, what is lead time? Lead time is the total amount of time that a product or a unit spends in the entire assembly line. So the simple formula for that is cycle time multiplied by the number of actual workstations. So if the cycle time is 30 minutes, and if I have 5 workstations that the unit has to go through, it is going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 30 minutes in each workstation, gives you simply 2.5 hours. If the cycle time, another example, is 15 minutes, and if there are 6 workstations, then the lead time is 15 times 6, 90 minutes. And later in the numerical example, I'll tell you to be careful when you are doing that in an exam or in real life too, to make sure that you don't have different time units. If you have seconds or minutes or hours, use that same time unit throughout while doing the calculation. This is a computer assembly example which has 12 tasks, A through L. And each of these tasks have immediate predecessors. If you recall, in project management also we had a similar example when we did the critical path method. It is very similar to that here. Task A has no immediate predecessors. So you can assign the task to the very first workstation. Whereas task B cannot be assigned to a workstation before A is completed. So if task A is assigned to the first workstation, task B can be assigned to the first or to the following workstations. So you can see the same thing with all other tasks. C requires B to be done, same with D, E, and F. All of them require B as their immediate predecessor. G has two immediate predecessors, C and D, and you can see that in the example here. In addition, you're given another piece of data here. Task A requires 12 minutes to be completed. Task B requires 6, and as you can see, each one of them require different amounts of time. Task I requires only 1 minute. The total task time, you just add all of these, is 70 minutes. If you can come up with a balanced assembly line, which will require exactly 70 minutes to complete the entire assembly of this computer, then you have a perfect assembly line. As you will see, that may not be possible. But your goal is to get as close as possible to 70 minutes. Now, let me refresh your memory again. The goal is to find out what is the cycle time, that is the time spent at each workstation by the product. The idea is to minimize the number of workstations, and the idea is to have the same amount of time spent at each workstation so that the efficiency is very high. Let's continue with the example now. Some more data. This is something that management should have provided you with, or you should know as management. Desired output rate. That is, what is the number of units that you need to produce? So here, the desired output rate is the same as the rate of the demand, which may be a forecast, or it may be from confirmed orders from customers. So it is 140 computers per week. And please make sure that you don't get confused between the different time periods when you solve this problem. Here we are talking about the demand per week, whereas the task times are given in minutes. Now the next thing that you know is how long is the assembly line operating? So it can be operating for 8 hours, 16 hours, 24 hours, 7 days a week. But in this example, it is operating one shift a day, 7 hours, only 5 days a week. So you have only 35 hours in a week. The first step now is to calculate the cycle time. Cycle time is nothing but the total time available, the total production time available, divided by the desired output rate. So the total time available is 5 days, which is given, times 7 hours a day. And I want to convert this into minutes because my task time is in minutes. So 5 days times 7 hours times 60 minutes divided by my desired output, which is the demand, 140 computers per week. If you do the simple arithmetic here, 5 times 7, 35 times 60 divided by 140, you will get 15 minutes. This is the time that you want each workstation to take during the assembly line. And you will also realize that every 15 minutes, you will have one computer coming out of the assembly line. So you have 4 of them coming out every hour, 28 of them coming out every day in the 7-hour shift. 28 times 5 is 140 during the 5 days of the week. So your desired output rate is accomplished. So you can work back and see that your calculation is fine. The next thing that you want to do is, what is the theoretical number of workstations that you will have? The total task time is 70 minutes. This is the time that you require to do each of these tasks. Now we are going to assign these tasks to different workstations, each of which will take 15 minutes. So the theoretical minimum number of workstations that you will need is nothing but the total task time of 70 minutes divided by the cycle time of 15, which will give you, in this example, 70 by 15 is 4.67. So you will need more than 4 workstations, because 15 times 4 is 60 minutes, but you take more than 60 minutes, which is 70 minutes. So you require more than 4, which is 5. And like I have said here, always round up. Even if this was 4.17, you don't round it to the nearest integer. You round it up. Because even if you require 1 minute more, even if this was only 61 minutes, you require a 5th workstation, because each workstation should not be taking more than 15 minutes. So the 4 workstations would take 60, and anything above 60, whether it is 1 minute or 10, as in this example, would require a 5th one. Once this example is completed, you will realize why I use the term theoretical, or the minimum number of workstations. In reality, you may end up with more than 5 workstations, because you may not have a perfectly balanced assembly line. We'll see that in a few minutes. Let us continue with this example. The first step now is to understand the precedence relationship in this assembly. I won't spend too much time explaining to you this, because you have understood this in project management. All we are doing here is translate these 2 columns, the tasks and the immediate predecessors, into this network diagram. The beauty of the network diagram is, pictorially, you can visualize the precedence relationship. Whereas if you look at this table, it may not be very obvious, especially if you have 100 different tasks to find out what precedes what. Whereas a network diagram can give you a better idea. If you look at this, you can say, does activity or task H precede I? Not necessarily. There is no precedence relationship between H and I. You can do I before H, you can do H before I. It doesn't matter. But between I and K, yes, there is a precedence relationship. You cannot do K unless I is completed, task I is completed. Now, how do we do this diagram? Very straightforward. I'll refresh your memory. All you're going to do is put the tasks on nodes or circles. So you see A through L, the 12 tasks are on different nodes or circles. And what are these arrows? The arrows shows the immediate predecessors. So you see one arrow going from A to B, which shows that B has one immediate predecessor, which is A. Now look at C. C has one immediate predecessor, which is B. That is the reason you see an arrow going from B to C. Same reason B to D, B to E, B to F, because D, E, and F, all of them have only one immediate predecessor, which is B. Now look at G. It has two immediate predecessors, C and D. No wonder you have G having two arrows coming into it from C and D. That should be clear. That is how you complete the whole network diagram. What you see in boxes here above each task is the time taken for those tasks. 12 minutes, 6 minutes for B, 7 minutes for L, and so on. Now, let us look at assigning these tasks A through L to the different workstations. Now look at this simple setup that I have created here. I have created a table here where you have workstations, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And remember, the theoretical number of workstations were 5, but I'm adding 6 and 7 just in case. We will see if we will need those new workstations 6 and 7 or extra workstations 6 and 7. Then I have tasks assigned to these workstations. Then how much time is remaining, and which are the tasks ready to be assigned next, and finally we'll figure out the idle time. All of these will become obvious in a minute. Like I said earlier, assign the tasks to workstations. There are 12 tasks and 5 plus workstations without violating cycle time, meaning no workstation will be assigned with tasks which require more than 15 minutes. Cycle time is 15. So I cannot assign A and B together in workstation 1, for example, because they take 18 minutes, which is more than 15 minutes. Secondly, you cannot violate precedence relationship, which is I cannot assign A and D, for example, in workstation 1, because even though 12 plus 2, 14 minutes for A and D together is less than 15 minutes, you cannot assign D before assigning B, because B is a predecessor of D. So that is what we mean by precedence relationships. Finally, zoning constraints, which I explained to you earlier, but in this particular example, you do not have any zoning constraints. So now let us start assigning the tasks A through L to the different workstations. And as I have noted here, there are numerous heuristic algorithms for this assignment. There is no specific method by which, or no specific one method that you can use to assign the tasks to the workstations. We will use one of the heuristics. So let's start with A. A is the first task. Let us assign that to workstation 1. How long does it take? 12 minutes. So how much time is remaining in workstation 1 for further assignments? 3 minutes. Why? The cycle time is 15. 15 minus 12 is the 3. Now the tasks that are ready to be assigned next. The only task that is certainly ready is B, because everything else requires B to be assigned first before you can go further. So the first step is task A is assigned to workstation 1. The next task will be B, and the time remaining is 3 minutes in workstation 1. Now look at this. The next task that was assigned was B to workstation 2. Because it takes 6 minutes, you cannot put that in workstation 1 because only 3 minutes were remaining. So you went to workstation 2 with task B. Now how much time is remaining? 9 more minutes in workstation 2 because B takes 6 minutes, and out of the 15 minutes allocated to workstation 2, 9 minutes are remaining. The 3 minutes are still remaining in workstation 1. But unfortunately, I cannot assign anything more to workstation 1 because all the other tasks succeed B, which is in workstation 2. So, but I can still assign some tasks to B. So what are the next tasks? C, D, E, and F. All of them are ready to be assigned next because their only immediate predecessor was B, which has now been assigned to workstation 2. Now C, D, E, and F can be assigned to workstation 2 or to subsequent workstations. So before I go to the next slide, you can see F cannot be assigned to workstation 2 because it takes 12 minutes and you don't have 12 minutes. Whereas C, D, and E take 6, 2, and 2, so they can be assigned because all of them take less than 9 minutes. In fact, you can even assign two of them, C and D or C and E or D and E, to workstation 2. So let us look at the next step. I chose to assign C and E to workstation 2 because C and E take 6 plus 2, 8 minutes. You had 9 minutes remaining, so now you have 1 minute remaining. The next tasks that you will be assigning are DF, which are already ready, and the next task that is ready now is I, because E got completed, I is ready. That is the very reason that I chose C and E instead of C and D to be assigned here. Because once E is done, I can be assigned, which takes only 1 minute. And you have that minute available in workstation 2. So if you look at the next step, B, C, E, and I are all assigned to workstation 2. Together they take 6 plus 6, 12, plus 2, 14, plus 1, 15. Hence, no time is remaining. The tasks that are ready to be assigned next are D and F. Nobody else is ready to be assigned, none of the other tasks. So now the next step is, if you look at D and F, each one takes 2 and 12 minutes, so nothing can go into 2, so the next workstation will be 3. So you can assign both D and F, which together take 14 minutes, and assign them to workstation 3. You have 1 minute remaining. Now that you have assigned D and F, you are ready to assign G, whose predecessors are C and D. They are both assigned. J, whose predecessors are I and F. They are also already assigned. So now J and G, J takes 4 minutes, G takes 7 minutes. Together they take 11 minutes. So I can put both of them in workstation 4, and that's what I did. J and G together are assigned to workstation 4, and the remaining time is 4 minutes because J and G together take 11 minutes out of the 15. Now the next one ready to be assigned is H. K and L are not ready yet because H has to be completed before K and L can be assigned. So the next task would be H, which will obviously go into 5, workstation 5, only because it takes 5 minutes, which is more than the 4 minutes remaining in workstation 4. So let's look at that. So H is assigned to workstation 5. You have 10 minutes remaining now because of the cycle time being 15. The next task is K to be assigned. K takes only 6 minutes, so it can be assigned to workstation 5 also. That's what I did. H and K both are assigned to workstation 5. The last task remaining is L. The time remaining in workstation 5 is 4. Unfortunately, L takes 7 minutes. Now we know the need for the 6th workstation. Although you said earlier that the theoretical or the minimum number of workstation was 5, we ended up in this assembly line with a 6th workstation. And now you're done. Now the entire assignment of tasks is completed. Workstation 1 has one task, A, still 3 minutes remaining. Workstation 2 has 4 tasks, B, C, E, and I, perfect, all of them amounting to 15 minutes with no idle time. Task D and F are assigned to workstation 3, and so on. Now, if you look at the last slide in this sequence, this is the final assignment. And these are the idle times, 3, 0, 1, 4, 4, 8. So the total idle time is 20 minutes. You have 20 minutes of idle time. You could have calculated this also very easily because you are spending 15, 15, 15, 15, 15, 15 minutes in each of the 6 workstations before the product comes out of the assembly line. And the flow is synchronous. Even though this is completed in 12 minutes, all the tasks in workstation 1, you do not send the product to the next workstation until the end of 15 minutes. Same thing here, same thing here, same thing here. And only every 15 minutes you have a unit coming out of the assembly line. So if you do the math, it will take 15 times 6, 90 minutes for one product to be completed, one unit of the product to be completed. Whereas, what was the total task time? 70 minutes. So instead of taking the ideal 70 minutes, you are really taking 90 minutes. So the 20 minutes of idle time. In reality, this may not be idle time. The workers who are assigned to doing these tasks, if they have this idle time, they may be assigned to do other things so that there is more efficiency. Sometimes they may not be assigned to anything else either. Now, if this is clear how this algorithm works in assigning the tasks to different workstations, which was pretty straightforward, and again, you can use your creativity here and common sense because there are many heuristics, and I use just one of them. Now, let us look at the real managerial implications of this assembly line balancing. As I said, the lead time for this particular assembly is 90 minutes. Why? The cycle time was 15, the time spent at each workstation by each unit, and there were 6 workstations finally, so 90 minutes. So what is the efficiency of this assembly line? It is the total task time, which is 70 minutes, divided by the actual lead time, which is 90 minutes. 70 by 90 will give you about 77.8% efficiency, which is not bad at all. As long as it is at 80% or so, it is pretty good. Now, you may want to, as a manager, try out other options. The cycle time was 15. What if I change the cycle time to 16? I can go back and redo the assignment of tasks to different workstations. I want you to try that out on your own. It's a good practice. You will figure out if you increase the cycle time in this example to 16, the number of workstations that you will need is only 5. So that's a big advantage. You have a smaller assembly line, less space, fewer people potentially, fewer employees. That's a good thing. However, what happens if I increase the cycle time to 16? Instead of one unit coming out of the assembly line every 15 minutes, you will have one unit coming out only at the end of every 16 minutes. You may think that is just 1 minute extra, but if you do the math, you will find out that the output per day is only 26, which will amount to only 130 per week. If you recall, the desired output rate was 140 per week. So by increasing the cycle time, you reduce the workstations, potentially reduce the number of workers, but you also reduced your output. Is that acceptable? You have to decide. The lead time becomes 80 because it is 16 times 5, and the efficiency is 89%, pretty decent. On the other hand, if I reduce the cycle time from 15 all the way up to 13, you will still have 6 workstations. You can try this out too by assigning the tasks to different workstations. Now your output has dramatically increased. You'll be getting 1 unit out every 13 minutes. So you will have 32 units per day, and at the end of the week you will have 160, significantly more than the desired output rate, which was 140. And look at your lead time. It is 78 minutes, 13 times 6, and your efficiency is 70 divided by 78, which is close to 90%. So in general, if you increase the cycle time, you will decrease the workstations, but decrease the output also. This is a good thing. This is not so good thing. Decreasing the cycle time will increase the number of workstations, but also increases the output. But you can't say anything about the efficiency. Efficiency may increase or decrease depending upon a lot of other parameters. But this part is true when you increase or decrease the cycle time. So you have to strike a balance. If you add an extra workstation, there is a cost. So the lower the cycle time, higher the number of workstations, which will be more expensive. But on the other hand, if you reduce the cycle time, you can produce more, which means you will be producing more. And if the demand is also high, and if you can sell what you produce, you will be able to make more profit. So there is no hard and fast rule for the cycle time. The manager has to decide based on how much the desired output rate is, how much it costs for different sizes or lengths of workstations, and the number of employees. But this gives you an idea of how the dynamics between the desired output rate, the cycle time, the number of workstations, the efficiency of the assembly line, all of them play together. The whole idea again was to identify the number of workstations, the optimal number of workstations, and the ideal allocation of tasks to these workstations so that all of them take approximately the same amount of time and the efficiency of the assembly line is as high as possible, 80% plus.